Why? It's because sometimes we know about God, but we don't know God. Right? Some people just do things because that's what you've always done, right? We go to church because that's what we do. We go to church. That's what my parents did. Or, well, I know about the Bible because I've been taught the Bible, but I've never really encountered the Bible myself. And we go through a knowledge encounter of life, and you have to understand there's not enough to know about God. You've got to experience God. I read years ago a book, and it said it kind of like this. He worded it like this. He goes, there's two different ways you will ever discover the sweetness of what they called honey. There's two ways you can know that honey's sweet. The first way is somebody that you trust, like a parent or a teacher or a mentor, will tell you, hey, guess what? Honey's sweet. And you'll believe them because you trust them. And so you'll go through life going, hey, I know honey's sweet. And you'll have the knowledge that honey is sweet. But here's the problem, you've never tasted it yourself. So you have a partial understanding of the sweetness of honey. But the second way that you will know honey's sweet is when you actually put it upon your tongue and taste it for yourself. Then all of a sudden you're gonna go, whoa. I mean, I knew honey was sweet. I didn't know it was that sweet. Like, I knew honey was good. I didn't know it was that good. I mean, I knew honey was so tasty. I didn't know it was that tasty. There's a difference between knowing something and experiencing something. And a lot of believers know the promises of God, but they've never experienced the promises of God. They know some of the things about God, but they've never encountered the things about God. And God is wanting you to not just have a knowledge of Him, but have an experience of Him. David said in Psalms, he says, oh, how sweet your words taste to me. They're sweeter than honey. God wants you to taste His sweetness. He wants you to experience His goodness. He wants you to walk in His abundance. He wants you to go from knowledge to experience. But so many don't. So many don't. And there could be a plethora of reasons. Could be because, you know what? You just don't think in your mind you deserve it. You think that for some reason there's some people that are chosen and some people are not. You don't think you're good enough, or you don't think you have the capacity. Maybe it's because you just don't have spiritual disciplines in your life. And so you've never left the capacity to receive from God because everything else is a priority over God. And you're a casual Christian. You're not a devoted disciple. And if it's convenient, you'll allow it in, but if it's not, you don't. Maybe there are sins in your life. Maybe you have allowed things that are inappropriate in your life, and it's holding you back. And what's happened is you've grown accustomed to the processed sugar of this world, and you don't know how good God's honey is, His sweetness, His promises really is, because you've been lied to long enough that you're missing all that God has for you. James says it like this. He says, but when you ask Him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Do not waver. For a person with divided loyalty is unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Watch this. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. You've ever asked yourself, why are my prayers not answered? Why am I not receiving all that God has for me? Why am I not experiencing what you're talking about and the promise you're talking about and the sweetness of honey? It's because your loyalty is divided between God and the world, and you're unstable in everything you do. Listen to me. You cannot be the Lord and Savior of your life on one side of your life and then try to dip your toe into the things of God. You won't reach it. You can't be like selfish with every part of your life and then just a casual percentage you want to dip your toe into the things of God and think you're going to experience it. You got to go all in. And this is not a comfortable conversation, but there's a reason why Jesus said, not everybody that knows me is my follower. Not everybody that calls out to me, I know them, because there's people that know about me that haven't experienced me. It's why Jesus said, if you want to be my disciple, you got to pick up your cross every day and die to yourself. You got to travel down the narrow path that leads to life. You got to go all in. You want to experience the sweetness of God's honey and the goodness of God's honey, you got to get your foot out of the world and fully into God. That's the lifestyle He wants you to live. But the question is why? Is it really worth it? Is it really worth it to go all in with God? And I think the biggest problem why people don't experience God is they really don't think honey's that sweet. They really don't think God's really that good. Like they want God enough to get them to heaven, but they don't want God enough for their life to be completely consumed by his goodness. Because in your mind, you're questioning, is it really better than all of the rewards of this world? Is it really better than all the urges I feel inside? Is it really better to fully surrender? And that's a problem that not just you've wrestled with, that's a problem humanity wrestles with. When you're reading, I'm going to park today in Ephesians chapter 3, and it's a letter written by Paul to the church in Ephesus, but there's a point in it where Paul starts praying. He's praying over this church. And I want to park in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 16, but I want you to see this. If you're taking notes, pull it out, but follow along. Watch this. Paul's praying this prayer. He says, I pray out of his glorious riches. Do you see that? He's not praying out of his glorious poverty. He's not praying out of the lack thereof. He's saying, I'm praying out of God's glorious riches. May he strengthen you with power through his spirit in your inner being. What he's saying is, I'm trying to get you to grow. I'm trying to get you to understand. I'm trying to get you to understand all the depth of it so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have the power, together with all of the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of the fullness of God. Notice what he says here, surpasses knowledge, which means this isn't rational. This doesn't make sense. The world will tell you you're crazy. The world will tell you you're outdated. The world will tell you. And guess what? You've got to be okay being the minority. You got to be okay being irrational. You got to be okay wanting to go all in, even though it doesn't seem normal, because you want that honey. You want to taste and see that the Lord is good. So Paul prays for three things over this church, and I think there are prayers that Paul would be praying over you today if he was writing you a letter. And that first one is that Christ would dwell in their hearts through faith. Now, this isn't salvation, because Paul's writing to a group of believers. What he's telling them is I'm wanting you to experience the life-transforming spirit of Jesus. I want you to encounter the move of God. I want you to experience God moving in your life in the most miraculous ways. I want God to dwell with you, and you know every step of the way. God has never left you. He's never forsaken you. He's with you. I want you to understand the power of knowing you have God with you forever. Get that in your spirit. And he says the only way you can access that is through faith, which means you've got to believe for something. You have to have a faith for something bigger. You got to have a desire and a craving for something more. You got to actually want to taste and see that the Lord is good. And a lot of people go, well, what's faith? It's this ambiguous term, right? Well, Hebrews says it like this: faith is the confidence of what we hope for and the assurance of what we do not see. Notice what he says. First, it's confidence. What's confidence? When you're confident in something, what are you? When you're confident, you're fully believing it's true. Like you're rooted in it. You're planted in it. You know it is what it is. You know it's true. You can't sway it. You got your opinion. You're locked in. You got your heels dug in. You know it's true. And what he's saying is you got to have confidence that God is who he says he is. You got to have confidence in the power and the authority and the nature and the character of God. And a lot of people go, well, that sounds easier said than done. That's right. It's why you also have to have assurance. What is assurance? Assurance is this declaration. It's this proclamation. It's a pledge. It's something you're saying. Have you ever tried to have a deal with someone and you're trying to convince them that you're somebody you could trust? What do you say? You'll say, I assure you this will happen. I assure you this contract will take place. I assure you our warranty is good. What are you doing? You're giving them a pledge. You're declaring that this will happen so that they grow in their confidence. And what Paul, or the writer of Hebrews, is saying here is if you want to fan the flames of your faith, you've got to learn to start declaring. You've got to learn to start proclaiming. You've got to learn to start declaring the things of God and the promises of God and the nature of God. And you declare it and you declare it and proclaim it. And as you declare it and you proclaim it, your confidence in God grows. The confidence of who God is grows. And all of a sudden you start seeing with this confidence and boldness in your spirit, you start making moves and start stepping towards that very promise, that very breakthrough, that very miracle you've been wanting and holding on to. There is this stirring in your spirit when you have this faith that God is who he says he is. So he wants you to have that in your mind. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, ring that bell so you never miss a video or a live stream, and give this a share to one of your friends. And remember, we go live every single Sunday. Till next time, pray God's peace.